Good morning, and welcome to part 2 of Chrome OS webinar series. I'm your host, Jim Hoey. In part 1, we talked about Chrome OS's speed, simplicity, security, and shareability. We touched upon Chrome device management. In this session, we'll dig deeper into the advantages of Chrome device management, which is also called CDM. To my right is Miles Schofield. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Jim. Thanks.
Miles is our Chrome OS and CDM engineer. Miles works directly with our partners to help them utilize the power of Chrome. If you have any questions during this webinar at any time, on the right-hand side of your screen is the questions panel. There will be an engineer answering those during this entire session. Just to give us a quick overview, what is CDM?
So CDM, or Chrome Device Manager, is a cloud-based management system that was created to support Chrome hardware used by companies such as SI, ISVs, VAIs, and others. Its main purpose is to optimize the fulfillment and management processes, which are install, service, configuration, and monitoring.
So why did Google create CDM in the first place?
Well, after Google created Chrome OS and Chromebooks to fulfill the needs of basic users, who mainly use the internet and the 5 basic web applications, Google moved on to looking for a more business corporate application for the technology. The first market targeted was the educational laptop market. This was a no-brainer for Google because managing thousands of laptops in this environment is just a huge challenge. CDM allows these IT corporations at these schools to quickly replace, repurpose, install, and configure thousands of devices owned by students. It has been so successful that at the beginning of 2016, Chrome OS became the #1 platform for the education market, passing Apple, and CDM was a large part of that success.
So after education, what did Google move on to?
So after they started to win a lot of business in the education market, Google recognized that they could expand CDM to support other applications such as digital signage, kiosk, and pause, where once again you just have a huge number of devices that need to be installed and managed. Similar to the phone business, Google needed to find an expert in this space, and that's where AOPEN came in. They came to us, and we worked directly with Google to develop the best commercial solutions for these companies.
So let's dig a little bit deeper into CDM. How does it work? Let's filter and really get involved in the management software.
So whenever you start any Chrome device, it starts up, a login screen appears, but you can log into your regular Google account and it connects you to your email and your Google applications just as you'd expect. However, to register a device with CDM, during the startup of that Chrome device, you can hit a special key phrase which switches the regular login to enterprise login. You enter your Google CDM login into the device and through the enterprise portal, and it registers it into the CDM system. Once in the system, you can move the device to what's called an organizational unit, or OU, which is simply a group of devices that all share the same Chrome OS configuration settings. So once you have your OU set up, the out-of-box configuration becomes a 2-step process. Enterprise login, move the device to OU.
So you mentioned some of those configuration settings. What are some of those policies and settings?
Right, so CMS is a huge system, so basically everything you can think of. Remember, this system was created to manage individual Chromebook sessions for thousands and thousands of students. So it has everything from app restrictions and permissions, session settings, network settings, data settings, whatever. It's huge, thousands of options. With the applications we're talking about today, you obviously don't need all this functionality since you're never going to need a session. To support this market, Google created a special mode for Chrome OS devices called kiosk mode. This mode basically just locks down the entire device, so when the device starts up, it only starts a single application every single time. In the signage market, for instance, this application that it starts is called the player, right? The only way to break out of this mode is to plug in a keyboard into the device, restart it, and then hit a specific key phrase during the first few seconds of startup. AOPEN Chrome bases have an additional security component to them, where the power button is only accessible via a physical pin, where it's a tiny hole in the side that you have to poke at. So setting up the kiosk app and which one it runs is the major part of CMS configuration.
And actually, in the last session, we touched upon the speed of kiosk mode and how it just boots up in less than 8 seconds. 8 to 10 seconds actually was one of their goals. What are some of the other additional settings that they might have?
In addition to the kiosk app selection, which is the main one, the other sort of things that you can set up inside of CDM are your network settings. This is important because it allows you to pre-configure your SSID and login before the device is actually on the site. You can do version control and pinning, which allows you to select which version of Chrome OS the device is running, and you can pin it as a specific version if you want. You have a conservative customer who wants to remain safe, and minimize the impact of upgrades. This also allows you to upgrade individual OUs to newer versions of Chrome OS first and test them out so that you can then push those upgrades to the rest of the fleet effectively. Another good feature is forced re-enrollment. So when you have a Chrome device, you can actually set it so that if it's an enterprise device and someone takes it, there's zero incentive because this device will always have to be enrolled in an enterprise domain. So those are some of the other things. These configurations fit with what Google calls a white glove service. This is where you set up everything beforehand and it's ready to go when it arrives on site. Having skilled technicians on site is expensive, so if you can just have installers, who just know how to put stuff and plug stuff in, it can save a lot of money. Also, the simplicity of CMS and lockdown of the Chrome OS kiosk mode drastically lowers the configuration time. With Windows, for some of our CMSs you have to go through over 40 different things, disabling services, notifications, visual settings, taskbar pop-ups, everything. The version control and network settings are designed to implement blanket change is much easier. You're able to simply just update the entire OU if your customer is required to update their SSID, and if you require an emergency security patch or update, you can just push it to all the devices for your customer at once. There are of course cool tools that do this in Windows, but Chrome OS and CDM is all one system made by the same company so they can optimize the product.
So we talk about policies and settings. What about health monitoring of these devices?
Right, so the main features that CMS offers are remote restart, device status, and taking a live screenshot, right? So remote restart allows you to reset the device remotely reset the device in the event of an issue. The device status is just a stoplight chart, tells you if the device is on and off. You can also check the version and things like that. Screenshot with a device in the field allows you to detect the video output from the device. This is useful, in case there's any, screen issue. You can certainly tell, if the problem in the field is more of a screen issue or box issue using that.
Okay. So how do you get set up with CDM?
So to get started with CDM, which is a cloud service, the first thing that you got to do is basically attach the CDM service to your primary domain. You do this by injecting a tag inside your website, and then Google checks out to make sure you're a legitimate company, and then after that it sets up your CDM admin panel at admin.yourdomain.whatever, right? Once you have your admin panel set up, you have to buy licenses through a reseller like AOPEN. There were originally two types of licenses, annual and perpetual. With annual you pay yearly, and it's pretty much designed to be a pay-as-you-go type of model. You can switch your devices, upgrade them, so it's basically a service. Perpetual is a one-time higher upfront cost that is designed to just be used with a single device. Can't upgrade it, it's designed to be used just for the life of the single model. Recently though, AOPEN worked directly with Google and to create a new type of license called the kiosk license, which is a cheaper version of the annual license. The difference is that it takes out all of the unnecessary session configuration settings and all that stuff, and it's actually, you don't see it anymore on the admin panel. And this is the license that AOPEN currently recommends for most of the applications we're talking about today. And if you want to get started with CDM and buy, first thing, like I said, is set up your domain, and then Jim can sell you the licenses.
So what are some of the ways that someone can start developing on Chrome OS with, say, kiosk mode?
So the absolute easiest way to get started was provided by Google. So if you don't have a CDM application or Chrome OS application yet, they provided just a super simple player application that you just load a website into. It's called the Google Sign Builder. Basically, you just go in there, point it to a website, set the schedule, you're good to go. So if your product is simply a website, or your kiosk is just a website, then you can literally have it up and running instantly, right? The next step is if you actually want to develop your own player and develop your own infrastructure and your own Chrome OS code. To do that, obviously there's a lot of resources online, but Google is excited about this space and getting into this market, so they're already working with a ton of people, helping them out. We can connect you to the right resources and people if you really want to bring your technology to the Chrome platform. The third option that you have, if you have a more complicated application which requires a lot of local caching, lots of different data types and data storage and integration and peripherals. In part 4 of this webinar, I believe you're going to be talking about an extra architecture that will be able to help those companies out.
Yeah, that's something we'll talk about in part 4 right after part 3, and this is part 2. So we did have one important question that came across in the box. How much is CDM?
So attaching your domain to CDM and setting up that whole admin portal is actually free, right? The cost actually comes from buying the licenses from hopefully AOPEN, and the MSRP for the 3 licenses are: the annual is $50 a year, the perpetual is $150 for the life of the device, and then the new license that we created with Google called the kiosk license is $24 a year. And the other thing that I mentioned is the Google Sign Builder, also given out for free by Google just to make sure that you can really get up and running and try stuff right off the bat.
Great question. So another important question that came up: if you're a managed service provider and you have your own domain with the devices on it, can you give the end user a login information?
Well, you don't want your end users having access to your CDM domain, right? And Google knows that. So what they did was they made APIs to make all of the information present in CDM available outside through the application. So let's say you're a CMS. You can directly contact the CDM server and pull all that status information and everything out there. It's Google's eventual goal just to make absolutely everything that's CDM available via API. And then you can just manage your users the way that you want through your own cloud portal.
Great. So part 4, we'll talk more about Meld CX, but in part 3, we'll talk about our 2 new Chrome devices that we have coming out that will be launching at NRF in New York, January 15th through the 17th. Mm-hmm. So if you have any other questions that you didn't have or didn't get a chance to get answered in the question box today, please contact us at info@aopen.com. We'll also be at NRF January 15th to the 17th, so come visit us at the booth. Miles, thank you very much.
No problem.
Thanks for your CDM training.
Yeah, no problem.
Again, if you have any questions, info@aopen.com or visit us at aopen.com.